Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining me for the reading of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have completed the reading earlier of preface and introduction, and today we are starting with foreword. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the principal work on the life and teachings of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Sri Chaitanya is a pioneer of a great social and religious movement which began in India a little less than 500 years ago and which has directly and indirectly influenced the subsequent course of religious and philosophical thinking not only in India but in the recent West as well. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is regarded as a figure of great historical significance. However, our conventional method of historical analysis, that of seeing a man as a product of his times, fails here. Sri Chaitanya is a personality who transcends the limited scope of historical settings. At a time when in the West, man was directing his explorative spirit towards studying the structure of the physical universe and circumnavigating the world in search of new oceans and continents, Sri Chaitanya, or Sri Krishna Chaitanya as he is known, in the East, was inaugurating and masterminding a revolution directed inward towards a scientific understanding of the highest knowledge of man's spiritual nature. The chief historical sources for the life of Sri Krishna Chaitanya are the Kadatas or diaries kept by Murari Gupta and Swarup Damodar Goswami. Murari Gupta, a physician and close associate of Sri Chaitanya's, recorded extensive notes on the first 24 years of Sri Chaitanya's life, culminating in his initiation into the renounced order Sannyasa. The events of the rest of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's 48 years are recorded in the diary of Swarup Damodar Goswami, another of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate associates. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is divided into three sections called Leelas, which literally means pastimes. Adi Leela, the early period, Madhya Leela, the middle period, and Antya Leela, the final period. The notes of Murari Gupta from the basis of the Adi Leela and Swarup Damodar's diary provides the details for the Madhya and Antya Leelas. The first 12 of the 17 chapters of Adi Leela constitute the preface for the entire work. By referring to Vedic scriptural evidence, this preface establishes Sri Chaitanya as the avatara or incarnation of Krishna or God for the age of Kali, the current epoch beginning 5000 years ago and characterized by materialism, hypocrisy, and dissension. In these descriptions, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is identical with Lord Krishna, descends to liberally grant pure love of God to the fallen souls of this degraded age by propagating Sankirtana, literally, congregational glorification of God, especially by organizing massive public chanting of the Mahamantra, great chant for deliverance. The esoteric purpose of Lord Chaitanya's appearance in the world is revealed, his co avataras and principal devotees are described, and his teachings are summarized. The remaining portion of Adi Leela, chapters 13 through 17, briefly recounts his divine birth and his life until he accepted the renounced order. This includes his childhood miracles, schooling, marriage, and early philosophical confrontations, as well as his organization of a widespread Sankirtana movement and his civil disobedience against the repression of the Mohammedan government. The subject of Madhya Leela, the longest of the three divisions, is a detailed narration of Lord Chaitanya's extensive and eventful travels throughout India as a renounced mendicant, teacher, philosopher, spiritual perceptive, and mystic. During this period of 6 years, Sri Chaitanya transmits his teachings to his principal disciples. He debates and converts many of the most renowned philosophers and theologians of his time, including Shankarites, Buddhists, and Muslims, and incorporates their many thousands of followers and disciples into his own burgeoning numbers. A dramatic account of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's miraculous activities at the giant Jagannatha Cart festival in Orissa is also included in this section. Antilila concerns the last 18 years of Sri Chaitanya's manifest presence spent in semi seclusion near the famous Jagannath temple at Jagannath Puri in Orissa. During these final years, Sri Chaitanya drifted deeper and deeper into trances of spiritual ecstasy unparalleled in all of religious and literary history, Eastern or Western. Sri Chaitanya's perpetual and ever increasing religious beatitude, graphically described in the eyewitness accounts of Sarup Damodar Goswami, his constant companion during this period, clearly defy the investigative and descriptive abilities of modern psychologists and phenomenologists of religious experience. The author of this great classic, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, born in the year 1507, was a disciple of Raghunath Dasa Goswami, a confidential follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raghunath Dasa, a renowned ascetic saint, heard and memorized all the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told to him by Swarup Damodar. After the passing away of Sri Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar, Raghunath Das, unable to bear the pain of separation from these objects of his complete devotion, travelled to Vrindavana, intending to commit suicide by jumping from Govardhan Hill. In Vrindavan, however, he encountered Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, the most confidential disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They convinced him to give up his plan of suicide and impelled him to reveal to them the spiritually inspiring events of Lord Chaitanya's later life. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was also residing in Vrindavana at this time, and Raghunath Das Goswami endowed him with a full comprehension of the transcendental life of Sri Chaitanya. By this time, several biographical works had already been written on the life of Sri Chaitanya by contemporary and near contemporary scholars and devotees. These included Sri Chaitanya Charita by Murari Gupta, Chaitanya Mangala by Lochan Das Thakur, and Chaitanya Bhagavata. This latter text, a work by Vrindavan Das Thakur, who was then considered the principal authority on Sri Chaitanya's life, was highly revered. While composing the important work, Vrindavan Das, fearing that it would become too voluminous, avoided elaborately describing many of the events of Sri Chaitanya's life, particularly the later ones. Anxious to hear of these later pastimes, the devotees of Vrindavana requested Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, whom they respected as a great saint, to compose a book to narrate these episodes in detail. Upon this request, and with the permission and blessings of the Madan Mohana deity of Vrindavana, he began compiling Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which, due to its biographical excellence and uh, thorough exposition of Lord Chaitanya's profound philosophy and teachings, is regarded as the most significant of biographical works on Sri Chaitanya. He commenced work on the text while in his late 90s and in failing health, as he vividly describes in the text itself. I have now become too old and disturbed in invalidity. While writing, my hands tremble. I cannot remember anything, nor can I see or hear properly. Still, I write, and this is a great wonder that he nevertheless completed under such debilitating conditions the greatest literary gem of medieval India is surely one of the wonders of literary history. This English translation and commentary in the work of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the world's most distinguished teacher of Indian religious and philosophical thought. His commentary is based upon two Bengali commentaries, one by his teacher Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami, the eminent Vedic scholar who predicted the time will come when the people of the world will learn Bengali to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the other by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's father, Bhakti Vinod Thakur. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is himself a disciplic descendant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he is the first scholar to execute systematic English translations of the major works of Sri Chaitanya's followers. His consummate in Bengali and Sanskrit scholarship and intimate familiarity with the precepts of Sri Krishna Chaitanya are a fitting combination that eminently qualifies him to present this important classic to the English speaking world. The ease and clarity with which he expounds upon difficult philosophical concepts lures even a reader totally unfamiliar with Indian religious tradition into a genuine understanding and appreciation of this profound and monumental work. The entire text, with commentary, presented in 17 lavishly illustrated volumes by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, represents a contribution of major importance to the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual life of contemporary man. This is written, of course, by the publishers. So, we will now start with the first chapter of Adi Leela. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the combined form of Sri Radha and Krishna. He is the life of those devotees who strictly follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami are the two principal followers of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, who acted as the most confidential servitor of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Vishwambhara in his early life. A direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami was Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, stands as the direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The direct disciple of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who accepted Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti as his servitor. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur accepted Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, who initiated Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who in turn initiated Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Goswami Maharaj, the divine master of our humble self. Since we belong to this chain of disciplic succession from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this edition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita will contain nothing newly manufactured by our tiny brains, but only remnants of foodstuff originally eaten by the Lord Himself. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not belong to the mundane plane of the three qualitative modes. He belongs to the transcendental plane beyond the reach of the imperfect sense perception of a living being. Even the most erudite mundane scholar cannot approach the transcendental plane unless he submits himself to transcendental sound with a repetitive mood, for in that mood only can one realize the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What will be described herein, therefore, has nothing to do with the experimental knowledge or thoughts created by the speculative habits of inert minds. The subject matter of this book is not a mental concoction, but a factual spiritual experience that one can realize only by accepting the line of disciplic succession described above. Any deviation from that line will bewilder the reader's understanding of the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a transcendental literature meant for the postgraduate study of one who has realized all the Vedic literatures, such as the Upanishads and Vedanta, and their natural commentaries, such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So, with this, I will conclude the first reading for today, and I'll continue shortly with our second reading. Thank you. Hare Krishna.